Hey everyone, Chris here. So I've been ranking all the feats in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons on this tier chart right here. I have done all the player's handbook feats, and now it is time to do the Xanathar's feats. That's going to be all the racial feats. I'm using a rigorous system. It involves assigning point values to every trait of every feat, then adding them all together, then comparing every feat in the game against each other. And it's a big process, and I went over the system I would be using in the preview video, which I am linking up above. But I want to get started on these racial feats right away, so we are going to begin with Bountiful Luck. So you have to be a halfling to get Bountiful Luck. In fact, the Xanathar's feats are racial feats, and just be aware I'm not ranking prerequisites, so I'm assuming if you're looking at Bountiful Luck, you're already a halfling, so the prerequisite doesn't matter. Now, Bountiful Luck only has one trait. If an ally that we can see within 30 feet of us rolls a 1 on a d20 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, we can use our reaction to let the ally re-roll the die, and the ally must use the new roll. So it's like we're sharing our lucky trait from being a halfling. However, when you use this ability, you can't use your lucky racial trait before the end of your next turn. This is reasonably good, but it's not super powerful. I'd say it's 36 out of 50, and it is just one trait. So Bountiful Luck is 36 total. And that is unfortunately only enough for D tier, right between Defensive Duelist and Durable. Next we have Dragon Fear. So this one is for Dragonborn, and they can choose a Strength, Constitution, or Charisma bump of +1. If you give me 3 to choose from, that's worth 23 points. And second, instead of exhaling destructive energy, you can expend the use of your breath weapon trait to roar, forcing each creature of our choice within 30 feet to make a wisdom saving throw, and they succeed if they can't hear or see us, and if they fail, they're frightened for a minute, and they can repeat the saving throw if they take any damage. The Mass Fear effect is actually fairly good. I think it's worth 30 points. Put those two together, and we have a total of 53 points for Dragon Fear. And that is enough for A tier. And for now, it's going to be between Mounted Combatant and Mobile. Next up, we have Dragon Hide. So this is a feat, again, for Dragonborn. And like with Dragon Fear, we can choose a +1 to either Strength, Constitution, or Charisma. And that was worth 23. And second, our scales harden. When we aren't wearing armor, we can calculate our armor class as 13 plus our Dexterity modifier. We can still use a shield and gain this benefit. So it's basically the same as having a mage armor up all the time. And for most characters, that's not going to come up, but there's niche cases where it does. So it's worth 10 points. And then retractable claws that do a d4 damage, and that's not very good. Those are only worth 4 points. Add those all together, Dragonhide totals 37 points. And 37 points is not enough to get out of D tier, but it is going to be tied with Defensive Duelist. Next, we have Drow High Magic. So we have to be Drow for this one, and we learn the magic typical of Dark Elves. We learn Detect Magic spell, and we can cast it at will. Of course, remember Detect Magic is a ritual, so often you can cast it without a spell slot, though the casting time is much longer. And we also gain Levitate and Dispel Magic, each of which we can cast once without expending a spell slot. And we regain the ability to cast those 2 spells when we finish a long rest. Charisma is our casting ability for all these spells. So one thing to keep in mind is when we're in Xanathar's, we're still talking a number of years back, so a lot of things we see in modern feat design haven't been started yet. So that's why we can't use our spell slots to cast these spells. We can't choose our casting ability to cast these spells. And those are significant disadvantages. Nevertheless, Levitate is a good spell. Dispel Magic is a good spell, and it's a 3rd level spell. And Detect Magic is useful. So add those all together. I mean, Detect Magic I gave 15 points, and then Levitate and Dispel, between the two, I gave 26 points. That's 41 points altogether. And so that puts Drow High Magic at the high end of C tier, ahead of Skulker. Next one, Dwarven Fortitude. So we got 2 traits here. First, we have a Constitution of +1. That's worth 20 points. And second, whenever we take the dodge action in combat, we can spend 1 hit die to heal ourselves, roll the die, add our Constitution modifier, and regain a number of hit points equal to the total. And so the idea there is if we really want to tank, then we can both impose disadvantage through dodge as well as regain hit points. So it's full defensive mode, and it's okay, decent feature, 19 points. So Dwarven Fortitude comes in at 39 points total. And we actually have a lot of feats that are already at 39 points. They're all in the C tier around this area. And Dwarven Fortitude ends up there as well. Next up, Elven Accuracy. I think I've heard of this one. So one of the most commonly taken feats in D&D. You got to be an elf or a half-elf to take it. So first, we're going to increase either our dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1. That's a choice of 4 different ability scores. It's not quite as good as being able to choose any ability score, but it's close. That's worth 24 points. And then whenever we have advantage on an attack roll using dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, we can re-roll one of the dice once. This is the infamous triple advantage, and it's exceedingly good. It's worth 50 points, the maximum anything is worth. So Elven Accuracy ends up coming in at 74 points. Easy S tier, right between Sharpshooter and Lucky. Next one we have is Fade Away. So this is a gnome feat, and you increase your dexterity or intelligence score by 1 to a maximum of 20. It's worth 22 points. And immediately after we take damage, we can use our reaction to become invisible until the end of our next turn, or until we attack, deal damage, or force someone to make a saving throw. Once we use this ability, this is the bad part. You can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. That kind of sucks. So, yeah, it's not all that great. I say it's worth 12 points. I mean, it's better than a ribbon. So, add those two together and Fade Away is worth 34. And that's enough for D tier anyway, and it is tied with Magic Initiate. Next feat is Fey Teleportation. So for this one, you actually have to be a high elf. Very specific. But we can increase our intelligence or charisma score by 1. That's worth 22 points. We can learn to speak, read, and write Sylvan. Big deal, 1 point. And we learn the Misty Step spell, and we can cast it once without expending a spell slot. We regain the ability to cast it this way when we finish a short or long rest. Intelligence is our spellcasting ability for this spell. We don't care what our spellcasting ability is, but we do care that we can't use our spell slots to cast it. Getting it back on a short rest is a little better, I guess. I mean, overall 15 points, but if you want Misty Step on your character, there are better feats to get it. So our total here is 38 points for Fey Teleportation. And that is enough to sneak into the back side of C tier, tied with Spell Sniper. Next feat is Flames of Phlegethos. I'm going to say Phlegethos. Alright, Flames of Phlegethos. Gesundheit. Prerequisite, you got to be a tiefling. And we're going to get 3 different things here. First, we increase our intelligence or charisma score by 1, worth 22 points. Second, when we roll fire damage for a spell we cast, we can re-roll any roll of 1 on the fire damage dice, but you must use the new roll, even if it is another 1. This is better than Elemental Adepts turning 1s into 2s. I'll take the re-roll, thank you. This still isn't a huge amount, but I'd say it's worth 10. And finally, whenever we cast a spell that deals fire damage, we can cause flames to wreathe around us till the end of our next turn. Flames don't harm us or our possessions, and they shed bright light out to 30 feet and dim light for additional 30 feet, don't care. While the flames are present, any creature within 5 feet of us that hits us with a melee attack takes a d4 fire damage. 3 points. And Flames of Phlegethos gets a total of 35. And that ties it with Durable on D tier. Next we have Infernal Constitution. Another tiefling-only feat, and we're going to get 3 different things. First, we're going to increase our Constitution score by 1. That's worth 20 points. Second, we're going to get resistance to cold damage and poison damage. That's kind of 2 traits. In fact, I'm going to say they're 2 traits. They're worth 12 each for a total of 24. And then we have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned, and I figure that's worth 10. Add those all together, and Infernal Constitution is worth 54 points. And that's enough for A tier. It's, in fact, right in front of Dragon Fear. Nothing flashy in Infernal Constitution, but you're just adding a lot of decent stuff together. Alright, next up we have Orcish Fury. So this is for half-orcs. You might think it's for orcs, but you couldn't be an orc yet when Xanathars came out. So it's for half-orcs. I imagine most DMs would allow you to take it with an orc as well. But would you want to? That's the real question, because you can increase your strength through Constitution, and that's worth 22 points. And then when you hit with an attack using a simpler martial weapon, you can re-roll one of the weapon's damage dice an additional time and add it as extra damage of the weapon's damage type. Once you use this ability, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So increase your damage a little bit once per short rest. That's 5 points. And immediately after you use your Relentless Endurance trait, you can use your reaction to make one weapon attack, reaction attack every once in a while. 5 points. So total for Orcish Fury, 32 points. So this is a bad feat, and it's an F feat, and it is tied with Lightly Armored in points. Next feat is Prodigy. So we got to be human, half-orc, or half-elf, and we gain the following benefits. We gain 1 skill proficiency of our choice. That's a ribbon, 5 points. We've already done that one before. 1 tool proficiency of our choice. Who cares? 1 point. Language, 1 point. Then we choose 1 skill in which we have proficiency, and we gain expertise with that skill. Expertise is something to write home about. I'll give expertise 17 points. So skill proficiency of 5, tool for 1, language for 1, expertise for 17. That's a total of 24 for Prodigy. And that's not enough to get out of F tier. In fact, it's all the way down here between Martial, Adept, and Charger. When I said there were better feats to take if you wanted Skilled, there are also better feats to take if you want Prodigy. Obsolete feat. So let's move on to Second Chance. So this one is just for halflings, and when you take it, you can increase your Dexterity, Constitution, or Charisma score by 1. So we're choosing between 3, so that's 23 points. And when a creature you can see hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to force that creature to re-roll. Once you use this ability, you can't use it again until you roll initiative at the start of a combat, or you finish a short or long rest. I'm not sure why they didn't do this with the other stuff in Xanathars that was every short or long rest. Adding the roll initiative and it recharges means a lot. I mean, with Second Chance, essentially you can negate 1 crit per fight. That's not bad. It's worth 20 points. So add it together, we got 43 points for Second Chance. And that is enough to bring it to the low end of B tier, so up there. Next up, we have Squat Nimbleness. This is available to any dwarf or any small race. And we can either increase our strength or dexterity, so that's worth 22. And we get a bonus of +5 to our walking speed, and that is worth 8. And then we're going to gain a proficiency in acrobatics or athletics, our choice. That's worth 4. And then we're going to have advantage on any check we make to avoid being grappled. Ribbon, worth 5 points. Add those all together, and Squat Nimbleness is a total of 39 points. And that is enough for C tier, right behind Dual Wielder. Next up, we have Wood Elf Magic. This is the last one from Xanathars. So we learn a Druid cantrip of our choice, and that's worth 8 points. And then we also learn Long Strider and Pass Without Trace, both good spells, each of which we can cast once without expending a spell slot. We regain the ability to cast these 2 spells this way when we finish a long rest, and Wisdom is our spellcasting ability for all 3 spells. We don't care about Wisdom for Long Strider and Pass Without Trace at least. We do care about only being able to cast them once per long rest and not being able to use spell slots to cast them. That's a big disadvantage for both these spells, which are spells we might want to cast more than once. Nevertheless, good spells, so 25 points for them. Add to the 8 from the cantrip, and it's a total of 33. And that is enough to be at the low end of D tier. And that brings us to the end of our rankings for Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And we will be resuming with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything in our next video. If you want to see that early, you can. All you got to do is go to my Patreon. These folks have already had a chance to see every video in this series. Arden, Awesome Face, Christophe, Condor, Dash Panther, David Lotz, David W. Skibbins, Eric H., Gabe C., Homawa, Ido, Isaac Leister, James Kimball, James Thomas, Jeremy Brown, Jonathan Lexi, KJ Aurelio, Nuts, Crocidian, Quath, Leonardo Gonzalez, Migish, Minery, Reichenstahl, Rysquy, Starfall, Steven Edmondson, TUM, T. Brownie, The Algor Rhythm, Tim Gerbafic, and Trex. Thanks everyone for watching. Until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody. Talk to you soon.